and welcome to How Did You Get That Job in for September. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. I will give it a moment or so just for people to log on and join us at tonight's session. But we're really pleased to be here, following on from the August session for September session. I hope everyone is well and having a good summer, although it's nearly coming to an end. But hello and welcome to this evening's How Did You Get That Job In? This tonight's is going to be the sixth in our series, where we bring you speakers talking about their careers to date and how they entered into their particular area or profession. So my name is James Goodwin. I'm the British Psychological Society's Careers Manager, and I'm going to be hosting this evening and discussing our guest's career. Now, you might have attended some of our previous sessions where we've shown several different career pathways within psychology. And in those, we've covered really diverse roles such as sports psychology, the wider psychological workforce. So we've had a psychological wellbeing practitioner. And you might have joined us last month when we were joined by Ellibor, who talked about her role with the Samaritans and how she uses research involving those with lived experience. Now, one of the key things that I want to try and do and showcase through these sessions is that there are many different career pathways into and within psychology, and also start to show how psychology and psychological knowledge can be applied to a really broad range of careers. There is something for everyone in psychology. I'm really, really keen to ensure that the key message throughout my work and the work of the BPS is that everyone's pathway into psychology, whatever that looks like, will look very different in regards to things like experience and qualifications. And this is something that I really want to get across through these events and also through our resources and our website. Now, I'm really pleased to be joined this evening by Sally Anne Poyser, who is our guest for September's edition. Sal, I don't know if you'd like to just very briefly introduce yourself for everyone watching.
Yeah, so I'm Sally Anne Poyser, but you can also call me Sal, and my pronouns are she, her. And I'm currently working as a mental health workforce development lead based in a charity organisation called With You.
Fantastic.
Within IAT.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Sal. And thank you for giving it the time, firstly, to come and talk about your own career journey and what you do. Now, as those of you that have been to these before will know, the How Did You Get That Job In series are relatively informal. So we'll be hearing a bit more about Sal's career, and you as audience members will be able to ask any questions that you have. So please do put those questions in the chat. My colleague Gemma is monitoring those, and we will be putting as many of those as possible to Sal throughout the evening. So these live events usually run between 30 to 45 minutes. So have your questions ready. When they come up, do put them in the chat, and I will do my best to ask as many as possible. I do just have to say at this stage, if we don't get around to your question, we do sometimes get a lot of questions, but I will do my best to ask as many as possible. We're also going to be recording this evening's live event, so you can come back to this page. So if there's anything you miss or want to go back to, you can do that. But do remember, you can only ask questions in the live event. So please keep asking your questions, but let's make a start. So Sal, thank you very much for your introduction. I just wanted to start off by asking if you could just describe to me a little bit about your career journey to date.
Okay, so my career journey to date started before I did my psychology degree. So I worked in a residential home for children with disabilities. So it started way back when I was 17. And I studied a psychology degree at Leeds University, and then gained other bits of experience through careers like worked in a residential home for looked after children, kids in care. And then I had a bit of a diversion. I ran a bar in Leeds City Centre because I was called for jury service when I finished my psychology degree. So I missed out on applying for graduate roles. And at the time, I thought that was like going to put me back in my career. But actually, where I've come to, that's been really, really valuable experience and something that I've been able to use and utilize to move into more senior positions. So although it isn't directly psychology related, it definitely fed into my psychology career. And the first, well, I also did volunteering within a substance misuse service, going into prisons, and the first sort of paid permanent full-time role that I got after my psychology degree was working as a drugs worker, recovery worker within a substance misuse service within Leeds. Absolutely loved that role. Worked there for, I think it's about 5 years in the end. And the bit that was missing for me was about treating people's mental health as well as their substance misuse. At the time, that wasn't really integrated. So I felt like I didn't have the right skills or the skills that I felt I needed to be able to help people with their recovery journey. So then I applied for a trainee role within an IAP service. So for any of you who don't know the acronym, that's Improving Access to Psychological Therapies. But I do know that it's taught a lot within the psychology sort of world. So I applied for a trainee role, didn't think that I would get it, didn't think that I had the right experience, did it on just put an application in, and successfully got a role within a service called Insight, and did my training within Halifax. And I absolutely loved it. It was a very full-on year because you're training whilst you're working, but it was the first role that I had within psychology where they trained you in specific things that you would do with clients to improve their mental health, to improve their anxiety, improve their depression. And I loved the style of it because it was very fast-paced, in the sense of you were helping a lot of people. So some of the groups that I delivered to help people with anxiety, you had 120 people coming to each one. So I really saw the value and the power in giving people information, helping them to help themselves with their mental health. And the sessions were quite short in the sense of, were long enough for what you needed, but I think people think of them being quite short because they're 30 minutes. But I actually loved becoming really skilled in being able to treat people and have those amazing conversations in it very quickly. So I personally loved being a psychological wellbeing practitioner. And it was for me when I came into it, I was like, right, this is my career, this is what I want to do, and just really gelled with it. And from then, my career has been a bit unusual in the sense that not the usual route people take from being a PWP. Because a lot of people who come in, say, oh, I'm going to go on and do my high intensity training, because they see that as the route that people have to go down, and it is our route. But I actually felt that I loved being a PWP so much that I wanted to see how I could develop and still be a PWP. But at the time, it was a very new role. This was back 10 years ago that I did my training, and there wasn't really a development route at that time. But I'm really glad that I had a really good manager who at the time told me, just be good at what you do, be the best PWP that you can be, and rather than trying to jump ahead to do something else, if you can smash being a fantastic PWP and helping people, you'll move into other opportunities. Things will come up. And I remained within a service called Touchdown for 9 years because lots of different career opportunities kept arising where I could stay within the route of being a PWP. So I moved on to being what we call deputy manager. So as well as doing therapeutic work with patients, I also was able to get involved in project work where we could make massive changes to the service to try and improve people's experience coming through. I was supervising staff. We were looking at trying to get clients involved in their treatment and design the service. So I really moved into that role and absolutely loved it. So I think I did that in a total for 5 years, I think. All a bit of a haze now. And got so many skills, so many extra things that I developed in through that time. And even at that time, the role that I'm in now didn't exist. But again, I was gaining all the experience and opportunities that I could. reflecting on them, doing the best learning outside of work that I could as well. That when we were recontracted to be a new service about 3 years ago now, I moved into a very different role, which was called a peer support coordinator. So, James, I know you said that someone had come and spoke about lived experience. The role that I did was bringing lived experience into an IAP service, which isn't routinely done. I think there's only a couple of IAP services that do that nationally. And for me, the one thing I felt that was missing through IAP was about being able to people to connect with each other, because in substance misuse, we'd been really, advocates of people going to AA, NA, support groups where they shared their story. So for me, it was a really nice opportunity to be able to bring the two experiences that I had together within creating and mobilising a new part of the service. So I did step out of my therapeutic work at that point because I felt that I really needed to focus on making this an amazing new thing that people who were coming to the service would be able to have help to engage with the service, have extra support, the people who needed it. Because one of the threads that I've had that I've tried to held on to through all of that, is about trying to tackle injustice and trying to improve health inequality. So people who are at a disadvantage because of where they live or the situation that they're in, their ethnicity, their religion, the things that impact whether someone improves with their mental health. So that was a thread through what I did in substance misuse within Touchstone. So I could really focus on that within peer support. Absolutely loved it. Did it for 2 years. Set up the service, so it's now running, and actually felt that one of the things that I also had a thread through the journey was about well-being. So for staff, so because I'd been in a senior role for so long, I'd seen people who themselves as therapists really struggled with their own well-being, and through the peer support service, we looked at trying to encourage staff to access support with each other. So I wanted to move into a role where I could focus more on the staff wellbeing side of things, rather than the patient side. And a lot of people say, would you miss the patient side? But for me, the way I see it is that even if you move into a strategic or senior role like myself, is that your impact is actually bigger, it's wider, because if you help, hundreds or thousands of staff to improve their mental well-being, then actually that will impact on clients. So it's a bit of a shift in mindset, to actually think, well, yes, I'm not doing the therapy side of things, but I'm hoping that I can have a wider impact on patients. And that's what I'm really, really passionate about. So that left me into my current role, which I absolutely love. I didn't know it was in a job. It's a new role. It didn't exist. So if somebody had asked me back when I finished my psychology degree, what are you going to do when you're 36? The answer would not have been a mental health workforce development lead. That wouldn't have been what I said. It probably would have been something within psychology. And at the time, the rhetoric of what was spoken about at university was going on doing a clinical doctorate, which at the time, yes, I thought, because that's what everyone did, that's what you do. And again, that might be the perfect route for some people. But for me, looking back on my experience, my skills, my strengths, the things that I'm good at, I'm actually more, I get a lot of feedback that it's more about my leadership and motivating people and caring about people and staff well-being. So for me, I'm glad that I didn't pigeonhole what I was going to do when I first came out of university, and actually gave myself loads of different opportunities to be able to expand and develop into a senior leadership role. So what I'm currently doing is that I'm doing lots of stuff. My roles are a bit unusual in the sense that I work for With You, so I'm a With You employee. But I also work across 7 other IAP providers within Kent and Medway. So in total, 8 fantastic IAP providers who are wanting to look at how they can improve the recruitment, retention and wellbeing of staff across the region. So that's obviously a massive topic, and it's a 1-year role so that I can really come in, look at what the big challenges are, try to look at what we can improve, getting views from staff, looking at the actual things that are going to make a difference to be able to make real changes. So, for example, one of the things that I'm really passionate about and why I've opted to do this session is because one of the things we're looking is about trainees coming through to PWP roles, and how can we market to people, get it out there that it's a role, that it's a thing, that it's a career. It's a career that you can do and you can love, and not see it as a stepping stone, not see it as something you'll just do for a year. Because if you have the mindset of I'm going to go into it and I'm going to enjoy it, you'll end up being an amazing PWP and do amazing therapeutic work with patients. So I'm doing a lot of work around career pathways, trying to look at sharing staff journeys about how they've experienced coming through the service, and trying to get involved with events like this so we can talk about actually what's important to know about IAPT, because it's so easy for people to not hear things from tutors, hear things on Facebook groups, whereas actually what we want to try and do is shout about the things that we're good at and the things that we want people to know. So, for example, the charity that I'm working for with you, a fantastic employer looking at career opportunities, well-being for staff, and flexibility. So I actually do a remote role, which I've never done before. I live up in Leeds, and I actually technically work for IAP Services down in Kent and Medway. So I would have never even looked for this role if it was a face-to-face, in-person role down in Kent and Medway. So the shift to having really flexible roles in positions like mine, where I don't have to do face-to-face treatment for clients, can open up even more opportunities. So the trainee world is a big part of what I do. But we're also thinking about how do we look after our staff who are in services. How do we make sure we have really, really good training opportunities? How do we celebrate the amazing work that mental health professionals do? Because it's so easy to not see that, that we want to make sure that people value the roles, whether it's a PWP role or whether it's the other roles within IAT. We've got amazing counsellors, for example, CBT therapists, all those roles. We want to make sure that we've got really good ways of recognising and celebrating staff. So that's a massive part of what we're doing as well. I could talk for about an hour about just my job, but they're sort of the big things for me, is that this role is a really new role that didn't exist, that I wouldn't even thought of if it wasn't remote, that I've come into and absolutely love. Really glad that I made that step and took the role. And it'll give me loads of strategic skills because I'm working across the whole of Medway, which is quite unique. So, yeah. Is that enough?
That was perfect. Thank you, Sam, for that that overview. I'm just really, your enthusiasm is fantastic, and it's really nice to hear that you can really see the enjoyment that you get out of doing the role you're doing. So a couple of questions has kind of come up while you've been talking. I think just reflecting on some of the kind of key questions we get at events. We've had a couple of audience questions, which I will try and get to as many of those as possible. But going back to kind of when you were talking about right at the start of your career, and it's been something that's come up in, I think, all of these that we've done, where people have spoken about kind of starting out on their journey in career. And one of you mentioned about kind of you had that diversion when you had that jury service, and then you ended up working in the bar, and you actually said it was valuable experience that fed into your kind of future career. I don't know if you could talk a little bit more about how that role kind of impacted that.
I'd say the two roles that had the biggest impact where I am now in my confidence and my skills that you don't learn through university, you don't learn through training programs within mental health services, is running a bar and also the substance misuse service as well. So at the time, it was just a bar job that I had for uni. And then when I got the jury service, I got offered a promotion. I said, I'll just try it. And the things that I got from it were confidence in being able to manage staff, being able to manage difficult situations and difficult conversations. Because, especially if you're maybe an introvert or someone who's a bit nervous, it can be hard to have a very direct conversation with somebody. But when you're working in a bar and there's very drunk people, you have to be very direct. And there's laws around, making sure people are old enough. So there's a lot of things you have to do, and it sort of makes you push yourself and have those conversations, because you're put in that situation where you can't get out of it. You can't say, I'm just going to go over there and let someone else deal with it.
Yeah.
So being a manager in that situation meant that I had to deal with it. So that definitely just built my confidence of being able to, when needed, be direct, have difficult conversations, and not sort of feel like nervous about doing that. And then similarly, on a similar for drug services, is that is a very different environment than IATs. You work with people for very long periods, people with very challenging, with very complex needs, in the sense that they have a lot of difficulties in their life. So again, that gave me a really good sense of understanding trauma. So why people might have certain mental health difficulties, because of the difficult things they've been through in their life. So I feel that really helped to help me understand that and work on unconscious bias, in the sense of how you might see particular things. So there's a lot of judgment within drug use and substance misuse, that I felt working in that sector gave me a lot of empathy. That's really important when you're working therapeutically with clients, and being able to do really thorough assessments and work out what's going on for somebody. So that also gave me loads of amazing skills that I could transfer into my P2P role, and into this role as well.
I think that's really important. I think that transferable skills is such a key thing to think about, and just reflecting on everything you said there, Sal, actually, just that confidence, those experiences can start to build up your confidence. And when you then reflect on that, it's all about then how you can start applying those, and those experiences will help. Just on a very similar vein to what you discussed. If people listening are interested, Liam Miles, one of our previous speakers, spoke very similar to what you've spoken to, Sally, in terms of actually worked in a bar and had similar experiences, and was like, actually, it's so relevant to laying some of those foundation skills that you need for psychology. And when you tap into and start realizing that, it can really help with those therapeutic roles and dealing with very challenging, complex behaviour.
Yeah, and it's so easy when you're new to a career and you're desperate to get the best thing to help you, that they tell you you've got to do to get on whatever role or whatever course. It's very easy to discount things in your life, and a big one for me is lived experience. So a lot of people can think, I'd never get a job doing X, Y, or Z, working with clients, because I suffer from anxiety myself, and might talk themselves out of roles, whereas actually working in psychology, and learning the skills to be resilient through those different roles, can mean that, lived experience is an asset. I truly believe that people who have been through difficult times or specific experiences can utilize that to help other people. So I completely agree that we need to not discount what might seem like a small thing, and actually value what we do, and be proud of the experience that we have.
Yeah, and it can contribute and make such a big difference to the actual services you work for and the service users. Ultimately, at the end of the day, that's really, really interesting. Thanks for that, Sal. So we're getting a couple of questions that have come in now. I appreciate everyone's asking. We're having quite a few questions coming in about kind of choosing different areas in psychology. But I'm going to kind of not paraphrase, but kind of ask a question. So you mentioned a lot when you were going through your different roles you've had. So for example, the PWP role was quite a new role at the time. Your new role, your current role, was something that didn't exist. You weren't really aware of. So they're all quite new roles now. Some people might see new roles and think, "Gosh, is that right for me?" How did you go about choosing those? What excited you about them being new roles?
Yeah, really good question. Yeah. For for me, it was those threads that I know are really important to me. So my values of what I want to do, my impact I want to make in a job, things that are important to me. So the tackling injustice and reducing health inequalities is something that I'm really, really passionate about. So the peer support role, coordinator role, was very much about that. That was the key focus of the role, but also around wellbeing. So after being in IAT and seeing, you know, the different ways of working and the different things people have to deal with, I became really passionate about wanting to make an impact from a leadership perspective and from a wellbeing perspective. So it was me knowing what I really wanted and that what I wanted to get out of a role meant that when they came up, I looked into them. The other side is that I'm a big believer in networking. So some people, again, can be quite nervous and not make connections, whereas I feel that one of the best things you can do for your career is talk to people, is to check people out on LinkedIn. You know, a lot of people don't use LinkedIn, but it's a really good opportunity to be able to see what organisations are about, what roles are about, and means that when a role comes up, you're more likely for someone to send you an email or a thing. Have you seen this job has come up, and it might be a job for you. So being confident about what impact you want to make and having the right networks, I think, gives you more opportunities. So as that would be the key decisions. I think the reason why I went into the PDP role was a bit more of I'll try it and apply. But it was definitely the right decision. So there might be some opportunities that you look at and go, oh, I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm a big believer in taking opportunities and seeing if it's the right thing. And I've always been quite confident with asking lots of questions, contacting people when roles come up. A lot of people get quite nervous about like ringing and asking about the role. But if there is a contact number on a role, you know, they'll try the best. They might not be able to answer all the questions, but it can give you a really good idea of what the role is about. And IAP's quite a small world. So you can, if you're connected with people, say on LinkedIn, you know, you can say, oh, this role's come up, and get other people's perspective on whether it might be something that might help, depending on where you want to get to. But yeah, don't be afraid of fixed term, temporary roles. This role that I'm in now is a 1-year role. That I think I could have been put off with it not being a permanent role. But for me, I would much rather take that opportunity and hopefully make it a successful role that continues than not, and just look out for something that's more stable. But I'm lucky in that sense that I don't have children, so I don't have that that challenge of needing a full-time permanent role. So I completely appreciate that for some people, they might need something more stable. But for me, I was able to do that because of my own personal situation.
Yeah, I think definitely all the points you've made there, Sal, I think definitely it is all about, I think, what you said when you're answering that question about values. I think that is so important. Picking out, thinking about what is important to you, because we're all going to have very slightly different variations of values. You know, there are going to be different I suppose different kind of values that align with different professions, and there will be different values aligned to different roles. So like the more strategic and leadership role that you're in now will have slightly different values to others. So taking a bit of time to learn what those values are, and I think like you said, it can take time. So people that are listening, give yourself that time to do it, and take those opportunities, because they can be really fun and just challenge you as well, I think.
Yeah, and I don't think I really thought about what my values were until I had a good manager who asked me, it's like, why'd you come to work? What's your what's your thing that gets you out of bed in the morning and gets you through the door and into work? And when you reflect on that, when you've been in roles, it's hard to do that when you're at uni because you might not have that direct examples to match up with. But taking a bit of time to think about that, I think, is really key.
Definitely. definitely. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with what you get out of bed for in the morning is really important. It makes me think about, there's a Japanese concept called ikigai, and I would encourage people to just have a look at that, because it is that basis, the kind of reason for being, and there's lots of different factors that can impact that. It kind of breaks it down into 4 areas, and it's that sweet spot in the middle where you marry together things you care about, things you're passionate about, things that motivate you, things that ultimately as well you can earn money for, as at doing as well. But it's that finding that, and that will look different to everyone. So I think that is some really good advice there. So thank you very much for that. Just kind of thinking about some of the things that you said in that last answer as well. I think you mentioned about how important networking was, and said about LinkedIn. How important, kind of, are there any other ways that any other bits of advice you would give to people about how to network, or what things you've done to network effectively?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're in a different world now. But when I started this off, you were in person at places, and it can be very, when you go on training or you go to a conference, it can be very easy to, just have your lunch and go and sit on your phone and not go up to people. It's a bit daunting, isn't it? But the thing that one of the techniques we teach as paediatrists to patients is exposure therapy, where you build yourself up and put yourself in that situation. So I lived what I spoke, and at conferences would walk up to people and have your name badge on, like, oh, I'm Sally. This is what I do. What do you do? And that's the first step, is face to face. But now it's a bit harder. Now we're remote. But like I said, there's really good things that have been put in place to try and help with that. So, like I said, LinkedIn is fantastic. So finding organisations that you are interested in. So, for example, with you is on Facebook. LinkedIn. But other services might have Facebook pages. So, for example, again, with you have a Facebook page. There might be different social accounts on lots of different platforms that you can learn about different organisations, the different roles and what they do. And there's more things happening now, like online, I suppose, like this, like open days and career events. So if you're following the different organisations, you're more likely to see offers like that come up, or even contacting organisations to say, do you do anything like that through the year? And quite often they'll do them at certain points in the year. So sometimes it is about reaching out, but hopefully sending an email or asking a question on a social account is a little bit less daunting. But yeah, I'm a big believer in just walking up to someone and introducing yourself and making a connection that way.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is really, really, really key. I think doing that, and actually just pushing yourself to do that sometimes can be really helpful. And like you've shown, the kind of benefits are massive to that as well. I'm just going to kind of bring things forward now for our next questions in terms of your role at the moment. So you're doing a lot of work around the kind of career pathways into psychological wellbeing practitioner roles. And when you started, it was seen as quite a new role. And often when roles are presented, and it's broadly within psychology as well, you see there's kind of very traditional, you study psychology, you become a clinical psychologist. You, for example, with the PWP role, as you're proving, you don't just do a PWP role and then move on to clinical, for example. What other, from your experience, could you talk about what other opportunities are there within kind of progression within that role?
Yeah, so there are lots of different roles within IAT, and it does depend a little bit on the area. So some services provide more types of therapy, so we'll have more roles. But like you say, there are core roles that through IAT. So there's the PWP role themselves, and there's what we call high intensity CBT therapists, and quite a number of services have counsellors as well, that deliver different types of counselling. So we have lots of acronyms within IAT, but we have some therapists who deliver counselling for depression, couples therapy, and then more widely there's other things like dynamic interpersonal therapy and so I'm not going to list them all, but there's lots of different routes through. But the big one that's misunderstood is the PWP route. That's the one where people think I'm going to use it to go on and do a different course. And sadly, I've seen comments on like there's different groups on social media where people are doing the course and already thinking about doing a different course afterwards, and that's not what it's about. It's actually it's an NHS role that either the NHS or charities or companies provide the service and have the roles within their organisations to help the people who are waiting for therapy. And there's thousands of people across the country who are waiting to have therapeutic support. So the reason those roles are funded is to help those people come through. So it's a real shame that there's some, messages that just aren't right. So the real message is that coming through for a trainee role, any trainee role within IATS, but in particular the PDP role, is that it is a career in itself. It's a really valuable career where you can make a massive impact on clients' lives, and actually a lot of you've got ability to have a lot of people. So I think that needs to be the I don't like the word rhetoric, but that needs to be what people see and people hear is actually it's an amazing role that people can come in, train, do their training over a year, and then build their skills and build their confidence and their resilience and the different therapeutic skills, and then look at other opportunities. So there are the traditional what we call high intensity route, but within the organisation I work in, there's loads of other routes. So people go on to be what we call a senior PWP. So they still deliver therapeutic work and it's still clinical in nature, but they will supervise staff. So supervise PWPs where they'll go through their cases and look at how people are treating their patients and look at things that they can improve on and develop their skills. So it's a really good role for developing people that are coming in new to the career as well. There's also then what we call a clinical lead. So in our service, we have a step two clinical leads, who are people who've progressed further through that route, where they are they're clinical experts really on the PWP type of intervention that's delivered. There's a new role that we've got two fantastic members of staff in who are really building that role to be a really new and fantastic thing for helping people develop the step two side of the work. And then mine is a slight offshoot. So people might go into what we call a team leader role or a deputy manager role. It's the same thing, but different terms, where it's more what we call operational side. So it's actually more around helping the service run and hopefully the best way that it can. And like you said, I got involved in so many projects through that over the years that were amazing, like improving the experience of people coming through for referrals who are from communities that aren't represented. So there's lots of project work within those sort of roles, but you're also supporting your staff and looking at people's developments. So there's some similarities between the two threads when they do sort of splinter off into more senior roles, and my role is at a senior leadership level because it's looking at strategically what we need to do to make the biggest impacts across the region. So there's two very defined routes, but there's lots more as well.
That's a really good point, Sal, I think, and thank you for that. That's been such an interesting kind of mapping out that journey through as well, because I do agree with you. I think that sometimes you just see that PWP run and then it's like, well, where can that go?
Definitely. And one of the pieces of work I'm looking at the moment is literally mapping that out, and that's something that gets put out within adverts for trainee roles within with you. So it's something that people can see from the beginning what they can go on to in the longer term.
No, fantastic, and hopefully that's been really useful to everyone listening as well, because I think it just shows actually the breadth of kind of where that can go. within an IAP service as well. So thank you for that. For my next question, I'm going back to, or kind of looking back at your kind of yourself at university, and a couple of questions we've had come up is around actually how you make the choice in terms of what area of psychology to go into. Sometimes, as we've seen from different speakers, that actually it's not always immediately obvious when you're a student as well.
Yeah, no idea. Yeah.
How did you make the choice in terms of, or was there a point or particular points in your career where you were like, okay, this is starting to make sense, that this is what I want to do?
Good question. Yeah, I definitely at the time didn't know when I was at uni. I think because I'd had a job before uni working in healthcare, working with people, that I'd done that role and loved it. So I sort of already had the experience of helping people. So that was, at that time, that was what I wanted to go into. So I knew that I wanted to go into a role where I was helping people, but I didn't know. And we didn't have things like this 18 years ago. Oh, a long time ago, I went to uni. We didn't have things like this. You didn't have people come in and showcasing roles. So it was very much, looking for opportunities, looking at things that come up and thinking, is that something I wanted to go into? And I'm a big believer in volunteering. So people can be put off by volunteering by thinking, oh, I'm not getting paid. But especially in psychology, where it's so broad of what you can do that actually you might not find your thing that you're really good at and think you love unless you try different things. And volunteering is a fantastic way of being able to do that. So there's lots of different ways to, whether it's volunteering your day here and there, or it's having a volunteer role through uni. I'd say get started as early as you can. I know a lot of people do like Samaritans, like you said, somebody. Yeah. So a lot of people when I was at uni volunteered with Samaritans. I know some IAP services, for example, are starting to have volunteer roles. But there's obviously other ways you can look. So in Leeds, there's a website called doit.org, I think. It's like all the volunteering opportunities. And I know that some universities are really good at advertising those things, those different opportunities. But that's how I'm a bit of a learn by doing sort of person. So for me, I don't think I would have known what I wanted to go into without the different volunteering opportunities that I'd had through my career, to be able to say that's the thing, that's what I like, that's what I'm good at, and then move into a role. And the benefit to that is it's a lot easier to get a paid role when you've got volunteering experience that is similar. Because as I'm sure everyone knows, it's very competitive when you come out of uni and you think, oh, I'll apply for a job and get one straight away, and you can get a bit deflated after doing hundreds of applications. So I'm very, very lucky that I was able to have some experience pre-uni and then built it up from there.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think, and again, this is something that is coming across in lots of these conversations that we're having as part of this series, is that learning by doing is so important. That kind of having a go at doing something in a volunteering capacity, it's fairly low risk in terms of if it doesn't go right for you, then you can just think, right, it's not the right option for me. What's the next thing there for you? It's really safe, and again reflected in other talks we've had. So thank you for that. So that's really helpful. Just coming to kind of our very last question for you now, and I just wondered if you had, I think you give us some fantastic bits of advice and some tips, and people can learn a lot from your journey. And thank you for sharing it with us. But if I had to ask you and put you on the spot and say what would be your main piece of advice or top tips for those that are kind of thinking about either a career in psychology or working in the area that you work in, what would be your advice you would give to someone just starting out in a career in that area?
Yeah. So I've been scribbling down loads of post-it notes with these sort of things today. So I've got a lot scattered around me. But yeah, I'm very blessed that I had really good mentors along the way, people who gave me advice and I took it and I listened to it. So that goes back to the networking thing of don't discount someone and the relationship that you can develop and the things that they might be able to share with you, or the things that you learn, or the things that you can take from that situation. But yeah, what are my top ones? Yeah, big ones is don't listen to what people say you have to do, and what people say is the right thing to do to get in a career in psychology. It's not all about doing doctorate. It's not all about being a psychologist. That is a route, but it's a very competitive route, and actually there's a load of amazing other roles that have just as big an impact. So keep your your mind open really to what you might be able to go into, and look out for new roles, and don't be put off if you see a title of a role that isn't what you've been told at uni. That's a good bit of experience to get, and speak to the organisation. I think is the big one. Don't make assumptions. Don't listen to, oh, my friend said, or I've been told that. It's actually get the right information, and I suppose that's the big ones really. Is you can go against the grain, and you don't have to do what people tell you to, and you might end up in a job that you really love. I suppose my ending thing is that it's amazing to work in psychology. It is. It's challenging at times because you are working with people and you're doing emotional work. But I love my job, and I'm glad that I didn't take a different route, and I can make an impact on people's lives, whether that's staff, and the impact on patients as well. So yeah, keep going. Don't get deflated. There's a few there, wasn't there, James?
Yeah, really big tips of advice, Sal. I think that keep going, looking out for new opportunities and taking them where you can, making the most of those. And you touched on it about that kind of having that mentoring, have that support around you as well. I think is really important. So thank you very much, Sal, for those bits of advice. That concludes our questions for tonight, Sal, and thank you for sharing. And thank you everyone that's been watching on Facebook and Twitter. And thank you for your questions. Hopefully they've been answered. It's been really great to welcome you along to this event, Sal, and thank you for giving up your time to speak to myself and answer the questions that we've had. It's really appreciated, and I think that everyone would probably agree with me. I've really enjoyed hearing about your career to date, and just I don't think you really have to convince everyone, but you've really shown, just like you said, how amazing psychology can be to work in.
Yeah. So, and people can feel free to connect with you through LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And myself through there. If you've got any questions to follow up that you didn't ask or pop into your mind, you can do it through the LinkedIn page.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Sal. That's great. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you everyone that has joined us and for your questions. It's been great to see those coming up. Please don't forget, as it said in the chat, that we do run these events live every month. So it's the first Tuesday of every month at 6 p.m. where we talk to people from all different areas of psychology and mental health roles and wider roles, finding out about the career to date, and for you to ask them questions. Just a date for your diaries. Our next event is taking place on Tuesday, the 4th of October. And the following one will be on Tuesday, the 1st of November, which will be part of the BPS Psychology Careers Festival as well. But keep an eye on social media, all of our social media channels over the next couple of weeks for details of our next speaker. All that is left for me to say this evening is, Sal, thank you so much for your time and for sharing all the information and advice that you have this evening, and for taking the time out to talk to us. And thank you, finally, everyone who's been watching. Have a great evening, and we'll see you in next month's event. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.